I was 23 the night my parents looked at my sister like she hung the moon, and looked at me like I wasn't even in the room. The moment still plays in my mind like a slow-motion replay. The soft glow of the Raleigh dining room lights, the scent of baked chicken, the hum of the ceiling fan, and the feeling that something was about to shift forever. Because that was the night a family that claimed to love me proved they didn't know how. Before we continue, kindly comment the city where you are watching from and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story like this. Now let's continue. I used to think families were supposed to feel warm, safe, like the world could fall apart outside, but inside those walls, you were someone worth holding on to. But in my house on Glenwood Avenue, the warmth always stopped right before it reached me. It slid past my shoulders the way a spotlight slides past a forgotten actor. And somehow, even as a child, I learned not to step forward and ask for more. That evening started like any other, my mom calling upstairs for Madison with that soft voice she reserved only for her. My dad pacing in the kitchen, checking the oven timer again and again. The whole place smelled like garlic bread and polished wood, the same smell it had every Sunday dinner growing up, but there was a stiffness in the air that didn't belong there, a quiet tension only I seemed to notice. Madison breezed in, wearing a sundress that probably cost more than my entire closet. She kissed Mom on the cheek, tossed her hair back, and asked if her surprise was ready. I remember standing beside the sink, drying my hands, wondering why she already knew something was coming. I didn't ask. I never did. My dad pulled out her chair like she was royalty. When I sat down, I pulled my own. He didn't even glance my way. The contrast was sharp enough to sting, and I found myself studying the table, the chipped corner, the little burn mark from when I was 12 and tried to make pancakes on my own. Funny how memories come back when you least expect them. Dinner felt like a countdown. Forks scraping plates, glasses clinking, my parents sharing glances like they were rehearsing a script. I stayed quiet, the way quiet kids do when they've learned their voice, changes nothing. I kept noticing tiny things, the hum of the dishwasher, the flicker of the overhead light, as if my senses were trying to warn me something was coming. And then my dad cleared his throat. "Avery?" he said without looking at me. "Can you pass the rolls?" That was the first sign. He never used my name unless he needed something. I handed them over, and the instant he set them down, he smiled at Madison. A warm, proud smile I'd never once earned. "Tonight," he said, "we have big news." My stomach tightened. Big news in my family usually meant Madison had achieved something new, something impressive, something praiseworthy. And I would clap. And it would feel like applauding my own invisibility. But something in my dad's voice made me straighten. There was an excitement there, almost relief. As if this moment were proof that all their years of favoritism had finally paid off. Mom folded her napkin carefully, pressing the edges flat. "Sweetheart," she said to Madison, her voice dipping into a softness I'd never tasted, "your father and I have decided it's time to reward your responsibility." Responsibility? I almost laughed. Madison had coasted through life on cushions, built out of excuses my parents handcrafted for her, but I kept my face still. That's when Dad reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a thick white envelope, placed it gently on the table, and slid it toward her. My breath caught. Not because I knew what was inside, but because I knew, whatever it wasn't meant for me. And that single realization, heavy and cold, made something in my chest start to crack. The news hadn't even been revealed yet, but I could feel the ground shift, as if this dinner wasn't just another night. It was the beginning of the end. The envelope sat between Madison and the salt shaker like it was glowing. My dad leaned back, proud, waiting for her reaction. I kept my hands folded in my lap, fingers laced tight enough to leave marks. A strange stillness filled the room, the kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat louder than the voices around you. Madison lifted the flap, paused as if savoring the moment, then pulled out a cashier's check thick enough to cast its own shadow. Her eyes widened. "Oh my God, is this real?" My dad chuckled, pleased. $150,000 for you to get your life started. A home, a business, travel, whatever you dream of. A soft ringing filled my ears. Raleigh had never felt so quiet. It was like the whole city outside held its breath, just to watch this moment unfold. Madison jumped up and hugged them both at once, squealing, "You guys are amazing. I can't believe this." I watched her arms around them. The three of them looked like a perfect picture, one of those framed family photos in dentist offices, all smiles and matching sweaters. And then there was me, sitting on the edge of the frame, blurry and unnecessary. My voice came out calm, too calm. Why does she get that much money? My mom stiffened like I'd spoken out of turn in church. She didn't face me at first. She kept smoothing Madison's hair, brushing a stray strand behind her ear. When she finally turned toward me, her expression wasn't angry. It was worse. It was dismissive. "Avery," she said, "please don't make this a moment about you." All I had done was ask a question, but she spoke as if I'd ruined the evening. I tried again. "I just want to understand. You've never mentioned this before." My dad sighed, the way people do when explaining something to a stubborn child. "We didn't mention it because, well, Madison earned this. She's always been focused, smart with her choices. She has a future waiting for her." I blinked. "And I don't?" Mom exchanged a look with Dad, a quick, silent conversation that ended with her lips tightening. Then she said words I didn't know a parent could say out loud. "You're not built for success, Avery. You're different. You don't have direction. You jump from one thing to another. This isn't an insult. It's just the truth." The room tilted. My fork slipped from my hand and clinked against the plate. Madison glanced at me, not out of sympathy, but annoyance, like I was interrupting her celebration. My throat tightened. "So you think I'm nothing?" Dad shook his head. "Don't be dramatic. We're being realistic. You're not like your sister." He kept eating after that, just picked up his fork and continued chewing as if he hadn't just carved my worth into the table. I felt something inside me close. Not a door, a vault. Heavy, cold, final. I stood up without a word. My chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor, echoing through the house. No one followed me. No one asked where I was going. Not even Madison, who was already scrolling on her phone, probably planning how to spend her new fortune. In the hallway, I paused to look at the family photos lining the wall. In most of them, I was there, smiling, standing slightly to the side. But in every single picture, one thing was clear. I had never truly belonged. Upstairs, I folded clothes into a duffel bag, jeans, t-shirts, a hoodie, my work apron. I didn't take much because I didn't have much. As I zipped the bag, I waited just for a moment to see if anyone would knock. No one did. When I walked out the front door, the night air wrapped around me like something alive. Humid, warm, and oddly freeing. A single streetlight flickered above the driveway, casting long shadows across the pavement. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking away because I felt invisible. I was walking away because I finally understood the truth they'd never admit. They didn't lose me that night. They had already given me away. I just hadn't realized it until now. My new studio apartment in downtown Raleigh was barely bigger than a storage unit. A single window, a creaky radiator, and a mattress on the floor. But it was mine. And that first night, lying awake in the dim glow of streetlights, I felt something I had never felt under my parents' roof, a tiny spark of peace, maybe even hope. It surprised me so much I almost didn't trust it. By morning, the reality hit hard. I needed money. I needed food. I needed a plan. So I took the only jobs I knew would hire fast. I spent my mornings at a coffee shop near Fayetteville Street, wiping down tables and steaming lattes for office workers in a hurry. In the evenings, I stocked shelves at a small grocery store, lifting boxes until my arms trembled. I went to bed exhausted every night, listening to cars rumble by on the street below. Still, I kept going, because at least I wasn't waking up in a house where I was a shadow. 1 week later, on a humid Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was on break behind the grocery store. The number wasn't saved, but something about it made me answer. A woman's voice came through, calm and familiar. "Avery? This is your Aunt Linda." I froze. Aunt Linda was the sister my mom never spoke about, the one who vanished from every holiday conversation, the one whose name always made Mom go quiet. "I heard what happened," she said, "about your parents, about Madison." She paused, then added quietly, "I think it's time we talked. Can you meet me in Charlotte tomorrow?" Charlotte felt far. Emotionally, it felt even farther. I leaned against the brick wall and wiped sweat from my forehead. "Why me?" I asked. She took a long breath, as if choosing her words with care. "Because you deserve to know the truth. The truth." The way she said it chilled me. I agreed before my fear could talk me out of it. The next morning, I borrowed a coworker's old Honda and drove to Charlotte with the windows cracked and the radio low. Trees blurred past along I-85, and with every mile I felt my chest getting tighter. I didn't know what I was walking into. But something inside whispered that whatever she had to say would change everything. We met at a small diner near Uptown, the kind with red vinyl seats and sweet tea served in mason jars. Aunt Linda looked older than I remembered, lines around her eyes, silver edging into her black hair. But when she saw me, her face softened with a concern I had never once seen in my own mother's eyes. She didn't waste time. "I know about the inheritance," she said, "the one your grandfather left, half meant for you, half for Madison." My stomach dropped. "What inheritance?" She nodded slowly, confirming what I feared. "Your parents spent your portion, all of it. They funneled it into Madison's accounts years ago. They used your name to justify it, and they never planned to tell you." The diner's sounds faded, the clink of dishes, the hum of conversation. Even the air seemed to still around us. I whispered, "Why are you telling me this now?" She leaned forward, hands clasped. "Because I saw the way your mother treated you when you were young. I saw how she lifted one child up and stepped on the other. And I stayed silent for too long." She reached into her purse and slid a small folder across the table. Bank statements, documents, proof. My throat tightened as I flipped through each page. My name. My grandfather's signature. Transfers that emptied what should have been my future. Aunt Linda watched me with steady eyes. "I can't undo what they did. But I can help you build something of your own." For the first time since leaving home, I felt something stronger than hurt. I felt direction. Yet as I closed the folder, one question rose in my mind like a warning. If my parents could take from me without guilt, what else had they kept buried? The folder Aunt Linda handed me felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. Not because of the paper inside, but because of what it meant. Every page was a reminder that my parents had decided long ago that my future wasn't worth protecting. It wasn't worth funding. It wasn't even worth mentioning. But leaving that diner in Charlotte, stepping into the warm southern air, something inside me shifted. The kind of shift you don't notice until you walk a little taller, until your heartbeat feels steadier. Until the fear you've held your entire life begins to loosen its grip. I had always been quiet, careful, the kind of daughter who tiptoed around conflict and tried to prove her worth by working harder. But as I drove back to Raleigh, the city skylines blurring behind me, a different thought formed. If they weren't going to build anything for me, I would build it myself. I started small. My grocery store job had a break room computer, and I used it to research community college programs. Wake Tech had evening classes in digital marketing, something I'd always been curious about but never had the nerve to pursue. The tuition wasn't cheap, but Aunt Linda insisted on helping. "Consider it a start," she said. 2 jobs, night classes, no sleep. My days stitched together like a patchwork quilt. Mornings making lattes for downtown workers. Afternoons stacking cereal boxes and unpacking produce, evenings cramming for exams at a tiny desk shoved against my studio's only window. I lived off ramen, bananas, and the leftover pastries the cafe let employees take home. Exhausting? Yes, but also empowering. The first real shift happened during an assignment on social media branding. We had to create a sample ad campaign for a mock business. I built a simple version for a fictional bakery, leaning into soft colors, warm fonts, and short captions. I posted screenshots on a student forum, not expecting anything. But someone messaged me that night. "Did you design this? I need something like this for my real business." A bakery owner in Durham hired me for a small $150 project. It wasn't much, but it felt like the world had opened a door I didn't know existed. That single job turned into 3, then 5. Soon small businesses across North Carolina were emailing me. Nothing big, just startups needing help with ads or simple content. But every client gave me more confidence. Aunt Linda would call sometimes, asking how I was doing. I could hear something like pride in her voice, something I hadn't grown up hearing. "Keep going, Avery," she said. Once. "Your talent isn't quiet. It was just ignored." I held on to those words. As months passed, I upgraded from doing small jobs on my bedroom floor to setting up a desk with a proper laptop. I created a name for myself. Brooks Creative Strategy. Clean. Simple, professional. Then came the moment that changed my trajectory. A real estate agency in Atlanta found one of my sample campaigns online and reached out. They needed a full branding refresh. It was bigger than anything I had ever done. I almost said no, but something stopped me. My mother's voice echoing in my mind. "You're not built for success." I accepted the contract the same night, and I worked harder than I'd ever worked. Research, design, strategy sessions, revisions. No sleep, no breaks, no doubt. When I delivered the final product, they paid in full and booked 3 more projects. That's when I realized I wasn't just building a business. I was building a life where their opinion no longer defined me. But even as things steadily improved, one quiet truth lingered in the background, like a shadow across the floor. My parents still believed I was nothing, and soon, the world they built around Madison would collide with the world I was building alone. And when those 2 worlds finally met, only one of them would survive. Success doesn't arrive with a trumpet. Sometimes it comes quietly, like the first hint of sunrise slipping under a curtain. And that's how it began for me. Small wins, small clients, small deposits that added up in ways I never expected. But then something shifted. Not slowly this time, suddenly. It started with one post. I shared a breakdown of how I helped the Atlanta real estate agency triple their online leads. Simple language, clean visuals, a clear before and after. I didn't think much of it when I hit publish. I was just proud of the work. 3 hours later, my notifications exploded. Comments, shares, emails, messages from people in cities I had never even visited. Nashville, Houston, Chicago, people asking for consultations, asking for help, asking if I had space in my schedule. I stared at my screen, stunned. The soft hum of my studio apartment felt louder than usual, like the room itself was reacting with me. Brooks' creative strategy wasn't just getting attention, it was taking off. The next client was a tech startup in Chicago, then a boutique wellness brand in Miami, then a nonprofit in Dallas. I went from juggling projects on a secondhand laptop to scheduling Zoom calls back to back, barely stopping to breathe. And instead of feeling overwhelmed, I felt steady, focused, capable. The more I grew, the more I invested back into myself. I upgraded my equipment. I built a clean website. I rented a small co-working office in Charlotte that overlooked the light rail line. Just enough space for ambition to stretch its legs. And with each new contract, each new email saying, "We chose you," I felt a layer of old pain melt away. The voice of my mother, that cold, dismissive voice, grew quieter. One evening I got an email that made me freeze. Subject line: Feature opportunity, Forbes Online. I read it 3 times. They wanted to highlight female entrepreneurs under 30 who built rising digital brands in the Southeast. They had found my work through the viral post. My hands shook as I typed my reply. When the article came out, I sat in my office chair, heart racing as I scrolled. There I was. My name, my story, my business logo. A quote about resilience that the interviewer pulled from something I'd said without thinking, and beneath the feature was a surge of new inquiries. So many that I had to create wait lists. My bank account swelled in a way that made the old $150,000 check my parents worshipped look almost laughable. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't surviving. I was building something that could last. But here's the strangest part. My parents still had no idea. They still saw me as the daughter who packed a duffel bag and disappeared, the one who never quite measured up, the one who, in their minds, had no direction and no future. I wondered sometimes what they would think if they knew the truth. If they saw the office I worked from, the clients who trusted me, the strategies companies relied on. Would they be proud? Would they apologize? Or would they cling to the idea that Madison was the only one worth betting on? Late one night, while reviewing a proposal, I found myself whispering a question I didn't expect. Do they even deserve to know? That question lingered like a draft under a door. It stayed with me during meetings, during late-night design sessions, during quiet moments when the city lights flickered across my desk. But life has a way of forcing answers before we're ready, because just when everything was rising around me, my name, my business, my confidence, something on their side of the story began to fall. And the collapse that was coming would shake all of Raleigh. Back in Raleigh, life in my parents' house looked the same from the outside: clean siding, manicured lawn, my dad's red truck parked in its usual spot. But the inside was starting to crack, and those fractures were spreading faster than they could hide. I didn't know the details at first. All I knew was that Madison hadn't posted on social media for days, then a week. For someone who documented everything, from brunch outfits to nail appointments, that silence spoke louder than words. But I didn't reach out. I didn't need reminders of what distance had taught me. The truth arrived through a message from someone I least expected, an old neighbor from Glenwood Avenue. "Are your parents okay? Heard something about a bad investment." I reread the message twice, a strange heaviness settling in my chest. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I set my phone down and stared out my office window at Charlotte's skyline. The buildings looked sharp and proud, rising against the evening sky. Nothing like the house I grew up in, where everything was neat on the surface but hollow underneath. The next day, more whispers surfaced. A mutual acquaintance mentioned that my dad had been unusually withdrawn at work. Then someone from my old church community sent a vague praying for your family text. My stomach tightened. Something was very wrong. 2 nights later, the truth finally reached me. Madison called. Not texted, not sent a selfie. She called. When I saw her name on my phone, I froze. A part of me expected news about an engagement or another triumph, but when I answered, the voice on the other end didn't belong to the girl who once danced around with a $150,000 check in her hand. She sounded small, unsteady. "Avery? I don't know who else to call." I leaned back in my office chair, heart steady but cautious. "What's going on?" A shaky breath. "Mom and Dad, they're in trouble." The words came tumbling out. My parents had co-signed an investment deal Madison rushed into, something flashy, risky, and backed by promises too good to be true. A boutique event venue near downtown Raleigh, pitched by a friend of a friend. They poured their savings into it, expecting quick returns. The business collapsed, the checks bounced, and the investors came knocking. My parents weren't just financially strained, they were sinking. Fast. Hearing it didn't bring joy. It didn't bring revenge-flavored satisfaction. It brought something heavier, something complicated. Because when people who once ignored your pain suddenly feel their own, it forces a question you're never prepared for. Does their suffering erase what they did? Madison sniffled. People are talking, saying Dad mismanaged everything, saying Mom lied about the numbers. It's getting ugly. They're panicking. I swallowed. Why are you telling me this? Her voice cracked. Because you might be the only one who can help. For a moment, my office felt too quiet. The hum of the air conditioning, the faint sound of traffic below. Everything faded under the weight of that sentence. They needed me. The daughter they dismissed, the one they told wasn't built for success. I let the silence stretch. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. I wanted to see if Madison truly understood what she was asking. She spoke again, barely above a whisper. You have a company. People know you. You could fix our reputation. Maybe advise us. Maybe something. Reputation. Not apology? Not responsibility, reputation. The same thing they once valued more than me. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. Where are Mom and Dad now? At home, she said. They haven't slept. They're terrified. Avery, please. There it was again, fear wrapped in desperation. I felt a small ache in my chest. Not sympathy. Memory. The memory of a girl packing a duffel bag while her parents celebrated someone else's future. I'll think about it, I said. And when I hung up the phone, one thought surfaced with startling clarity. Their perfect world wasn't crumbling. It had already collapsed, and now they were trying to crawl through the rubble toward the daughter they left behind. I didn't rush to them, not out of spite, but because rushing was something the old version of me would have done, the girl who tried to earn love by showing up first, fixing everything, holding the family together even when they never held her. I wasn't that girl anymore. Instead, I took a day to breathe. I walked around uptown Charlotte. The sidewalks alive with people heading to lunch, the clatter of plates from outdoor cafes filling the air. The city felt honest. It didn't pretend to love you. It didn't pretend to reject you. It simply reflected what you built. By evening, I made my choice. The next morning, I emailed Madison an address. Have them meet me here at 11. Not my studio, not a coffee shop. My office. When the elevator opened at the 22nd floor, my parents stepped out cautiously. They looked smaller than I remembered. My dad's shoulders were usually squared, confident. Today they sagged. My mom's face, always perfectly controlled, had cracks running through every expression. I met them in the conference room, sunlight stretching across the long table like it belonged there more than they did. They hesitated before sitting. Glancing around at the polished walls, the framed accomplishments, the quiet hum of a company they didn't know existed. My dad cleared his throat first. Avery, this is impressive. We didn't know. I know, I replied. Calm, steady. You never asked. Mom folded her shaking hands. We're proud of you, she said quickly, like the words might shatter if she spoke them too slowly. It was the first time I'd heard her say it, but it felt rehearsed, like a line she remembered too late. I leaned back. Why are you here? Silence stretched across the table. My dad finally spoke. We made some mistakes. I raised a brow. Which ones? He swallowed. The investment? The money? The situation with Madison. The situation? I asked. Or the $150,000 you handed her while telling me I wasn't built for success? Mom flinched. Dad looked down at the table. This was the moment I'd imagined 1,000 times. I thought I'd feel triumphant, powerful, maybe vindicated, but instead, all I felt was clarity, like someone had cleaned the fogged glass I used to look through. My dad exhaled heavily. "We were wrong. We misjudged you. And now, we need your help." There it was. The truth they'd avoided for years. I studied them, two people who raised me, fed me, clothed me, yet never really saw me. And now, faced with losing everything, they were finally looking. "What kind of help?" I asked. Mom's voice shook. "People are talking. Our reputation, it's ruined. We thought maybe your expertise could fix it. Maybe guide us. Maybe soften what's being said." A bitter thought crossed my mind. They didn't come for me. They came for what I became. I leaned forward. "Tell me something honestly. If your investment hadn't failed, would you be sitting here right now?" The room stilled. My dad opened his mouth, closed it, then lowered his gaze. That was my answer. I stood slowly, letting my chair slide back. "You didn't lose your reputation because of one investment. You lost it because you spent years building a world where only one daughter mattered." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Avery, please." I paused at the doorway. "I'll help you, but not the way you think." Their confusion settled like dust behind me as I left the room. Because the help I planned to give wouldn't protect their image. It would expose the truth behind it. And when that truth came to light, they would finally feel what it meant to be invisible. I didn't sleep much after that meeting, not from guilt, but from clarity. Every choice my parents made had led us here, to a crossroads where the truth finally had room to breathe. And I knew exactly what had to happen next. The next morning, I met with my team in the conference room. They didn't know the personal reasons behind what I was about to do, and I didn't explain. Not because I was hiding anything, but because this was not about anger. It was about balance. I presented a simple proposal, a new community scholarship fund. A program designed to support young women in North Carolina who had been overlooked or underestimated. The scholarship would carry a name that everyone in Raleigh recognized: the Madison Brooks Future Leaders Award. I kept my voice steady as I explained the details, but inside, something sharp and quiet settled into place. My team loved the idea. They praised its heart and purpose. And in a way, it did have heart. I wasn't trying to destroy Madison. I was simply telling the truth in the only language my parents ever respected: public visibility. 2 weeks later, the scholarship launched at a community event in downtown Raleigh. Press, local businesses, families, educators. A crowd large enough to send ripples through the city. Cameras flashed, reporters asked questions, and then they asked the one I knew would come. What inspired this scholarship? I smiled gently. Everyone deserves the chance to chase a future that was denied to them, even when the people closest to them choose someone else. A quiet shift moved through the audience. Curiosity, confusion. Then, the next question landed. Is it true the Brooks family mismanaged a shared inheritance meant for both daughters? The air grew still. There it was. The truth slipping into daylight. I didn't embellish anything. I didn't accuse. I didn't dramatize. I simply confirmed what the documents in my possession already proved. And because the scholarship was in Madison's name, the story spread within hours. Not as gossip, as fact. By evening, the Raleigh community was buzzing. The same people who once admired my parents for their perfect family image were now questioning how perfect that image really was. Articles surfaced, conversations multiplied, neighbors whispered, friends reconsidered. The truth moved through the city like a tide, not violent, just unstoppable. My parents called. Once, twice, 5 times. I didn't answer. When I finally drove to their house, the porch lights were dimmer than I remembered. My mom opened the door with swollen eyes. My dad hovered behind her. Shoulders slumped. They looked older, as if the truth had aged them overnight. "You embarrassed us," my mom said softly, not angry, broken. No, I replied. I revealed what you hid. My dad stepped forward. We lost everything. Our standing, our trust, our name. Was that what you wanted? I studied them, taking in the weight of their regret. I wanted you to face what you created. You gave everything to Madison and nothing to me. And you told me I deserved nothing. My mom's voice cracked. We were wrong. I know, I said quietly. But I learned something important. Family is not about who you choose to lift up. It is about who you choose not to abandon. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint chirping of cicadas outside, filling the silence with a strange, gentle rhythm. I stepped back toward my car. You didn't lose your reputation because of me. You lost it because the truth finally had room to breathe. My dad whispered, Avery, please, don't leave. I paused, remembering the girl who once waited for them to knock on her bedroom door, who waited for love that never came. I'm not leaving, I said softly. I'm simply living. I walked away, the night air settling around me like that first moment of freedom 2 years ago. And as I reached my car, something inside me felt still, balanced, whole. The story had begun with a family that chose a favorite. It ended with a daughter who chose herself. And that choice was the one thing they would regret forever.